don't know me, I'm Blake Cohn. I'm the Executive Director of the National Network of Schools in Partnership. And I'm really happy to see everybody here today. I'm thrilled to have Rachel here to talk to us about the collaboration she has coordinated in middle school student councils with a diverse group of schools in her area. I'm going to leave it to her to tell us more. And there will be plenty of time for questions and discussion at the end. But Rachel, thank you as always for being here and for being a participant with all things NNSP. It is great to have you, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about your, well, we discussed this, Rachel and I discussed, I have a soft spot for middle schoolers, so I'm really looking forward to today. So anyway, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you all for calling in or Zooming in or whatever you want to call it. This is the first time I am, giving one of these online. I know that I was at the NNSP annual conference last January, and I gave a version of this at one of the the Inspire mini sessions. So I'm excited to share our work with you today via this Zoom call. I'm going to try to see if I can share my screen. Bear with me for just a moment, just so you can follow along with my presentation. Just one moment, and let me know if this works. Let me go to present, and
you're good. We can see it.
Okay, beautiful. So I tweaked this a bit from last January, but essentially, what I'm going to share with you today is a little bit about how 3 different schools, and within that 3 very different kinds of schools, a public school, a parochial school, and a private school have come together over the last several years, and how we were able to find some commonalities, what sorts of challenges we have faced in working together, and then what are some of our, sort of mini success stories. And hopefully, the hope is that you will take some of this away and apply it to your own to your own schools or to your own neighborhoods, or to some of the partners that you work with as well. And certainly I'm happy to learn from you all what has worked for you, and we can discuss at the end some of the questions you have. And certainly, this kind of work does not come without challenges, which I definitely will address. So just to give you a bit of background, I work at Riverdale Country School. I'm the school's Director of Service Learning. And we are located in the Bronx. If you're not familiar with New York, here is a map of where we are. But the Bronx, as you can see, is quite large, the borough of the Bronx. And so I'm just going to get out of the presentation for a second because I wanted to pull up a Google map. Can you all see the map? Okay. So if I click on, so within that map, I wanted to sort of orient you geographically to where we are. So this is Manhattan down here, which probably many of you are familiar with. I live right about here on the Upper West Side, and my commute is about 15-20 minutes up the West Side Highway, or you could take the subway. And you end up here at Riverdale Country School. So I'm going to click on that. This is the first time I'm doing this, by the way. So hopefully this is working, and you can sort of see, I'm going to zoom out a bit, but where Riverdale Country School lies on the map is in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. It's a really beautiful sort of suburban part of the Bronx. A lot of people don't think of, the Bronx as suburban. A lot of it is very city and very urban-like, but the area where our school is located, along with 2 other schools, which you can see, I think, on the map, Fieldston and Horace Mann, are located in this beautiful community right on Van Cortlandt Park, which is that big green area to the right of the school. If I zoom out a bit more, I will show you where the other 2 schools are located. This is PS 279, which is a public school. It's a K-8 school located in the West Bronx. And if I zoom out even more and click on my other tag, hang on just a second while I move this around. You will see, let me just zoom over here, in Hunts Point, St. Ignatius School, which is the parochial school that we also have a partnership with. And so if you can see, it's quite a far distance between the schools, though they all still are located in the Bronx borough. Let me go back to present mode. Okay, so there we are. I just wanted to geographically, sort of give you a sense of where we are located and where the other two schools are located. The Bronx, whereas Manhattan and a lot of the boroughs have very good public transportation systems, the Bronx is sort of lacking in that sense. And you really need a car or a school bus, if you're talking about kids, to get from one location to the other. And that will come up a bit later when we talk about some of the challenges that we faced. So as I said, St. Ignatius is a parochial middle school only, so it's only 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. It's located in Hunts Point, so it's about 20 to 30 minutes away by car from Riverdale, even though it's only 9 miles away. And then 279, as I said, is a K-8 public school, and that's about 15 minutes or 6 miles away. And we are a K-12 private school located in Riverdale. Okay, so the history and background really of how we came together. Let me go back. These 3 schools. The relationship with St. Ignatius predated my time. I've now been at Riverdale about 9 years. And the relationship with St. Ignatius had started before I got there. And it was sort of I'm not sure exactly, I think my boss, who's the head of our middle school, had some connection to an organization in Hunts Point, and that nonprofit had connected him with St. Ignatius School. And they started a relationship which was really just sort of a one-off. Once a year we would host them around, I think it was called the Valentine's Day dinner, host them for a dinner, and they would come to our school and we would all have sort of, this nice, lovely dinner together, and that was really it. It was like a one day a year type of partnership, which, when I came into my role as director of service learning and I attended that event, and again, it was lovely, but I sort of got me thinking, okay, well, we're 2 schools. I wonder what else we could do here instead of, just this one day, one day a year event, which again was nice, and it was open to students and families who came and helped that day. And it was it was nice, but I just was like, I wonder what else we could do with this middle school. And then if those of you that remember, that live locally, will remember Hurricane Sandy. And after Hurricane Sandy, the mayor of New York had put out a call to public and private schools, asking them to partner together in the wake of Hurricane Sandy. And a school that came to our forefront, I think it was through an alumni connection of some sort, was PS 279, which is the K-8 school, also in the Bronx. And so, I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to look back at that mayor's call to action, but I know that he had asked specifically for public and private schools to partner. And so they became our sort of partner school. So then I was faced with, this challenge. Okay, so we've got Riverdale, which is the private school. We've got PS 279, who's our new public school partner. And again, we weren't really sure what the mayor was asking, just that, that we maybe share resources or work together towards common goals. And then we had this parochial school over in Hunts Point, St. Ignatius. And so in thinking about it, in several conversations with folks here and with each other, with the principals, of the other 2 schools, we kind of kept thinking, okay, well, what do we have in common? We're all schools, we're all located in the Bronx, though as I showed you before on the map, different parts of the Bronx, but we do have that in common. And because Ignatius is only a 6th grade, a middle school rather, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we decided to hone in our work together by focusing in on middle schools, since each of us had a middle school. And each of us had, within that middle school structure, we each had a middle school student council. So we thought that might be an easy or at least tangible way to collaborate together. And so that's how we sort of formed this relationship with both schools, is that we would bring our middle school student councils together each year to, several times a year, to do some work together. And again, not just like throw the student councils in a room and say, okay, go for it, or be friends, because that's kind of awkward, and without some direction, kids naturally, I think, tend to stick to their own, to who they know. And so we would, do some icebreakers. We would do some name games every time that either they would come here or we would go there, and play some type of like leadership type of or teamwork kind of a game together. In order to break the ice, but also to break down barriers, because these are all middle school age kids from 3 different schools, 3 different backgrounds coming together, and then eventually, once sort of they got to know each other a bit through these meetings, which are always over lunch, by the way. So food is really key, because we found that kids tend to really bond over their love for pizza or French fries or whatever might have been served that day. And we also usually try to, if we had time, would combine some sort of fun and active activities. So we would bring our kids down, the kids down to our gym, or we've been to the gym at PS 279, and like a big game of basketball would break out. And so we tried to work in ways that, for students to bond over common likes and interests. So, eventually throughout the year, we would try to focus them and do a brainstorming session with them about ways that they could improve the Bronx community. Seeing as, that was the one commonality all 3 schools had, what could we do to leave the Bronx a better place? And so one year it became a campaign to write letters in Hunts Point. When we had done our walking tour of the neighborhood, one of the days that our student council was there was quite a busy intersection. And, some of the students from St. Ignatius were telling our kids, like, oh yeah, this is a very dangerous intersection. Unfortunately, some people have been really badly injured at this intersection. And so the students were talking about that. They decided to write some letters to local politicians to advocate for safer crossing guard, to have some crossing guards there during school hours or at dismissal or things like that. And so they came together to write those letters. I'm not sure exactly what may have happened to those policies, but the nice part was that the students were working together towards this common goal that they had. And then another year, I think they decided to clean up a park close to our community called Endor Community Garden. So after school, they would come together to kind of help spruce up the park in the springtime and plant some bulbs. And then another year, I'm trying to think back over the years, one of the joint projects I think was the beautification inside PS 279. So they came and kind of spruced up the outside of our Riverdale Community Park. And then the next year, PS 279 said, hey, we could really use your help, the student councils, to come together and help paint the inside stairwells of their school. So, and so that was the joint project. And so I think that, in bringing them together, again, focusing them on finding some commonalities, even though they come from very different backgrounds and very different schools. So to find that common ground of the borough of the Bronx. And at the end of the year, we always say, we're going to celebrate the great work that we've done together. And I think students, especially middle school students, like Blake mentioned, they like to have fun, and they have and we give them a little bit of ownership over what are you going to do this year to celebrate. So at the end, I'll show you some of their brainstorming lists, everything from, we've done bowling, we've done bumper cars, we've gone to the movies together. We read like a joint book, and then we all went to see it in the theater. So, depending on what the group wants to do that year, and also what's feasible. We've also, the first year when we brainstormed how to celebrate, one of the kids was like, oh, we should go down to Bullmore in Manhattan and, do bowling. And then, and it sounded fun and everyone was into bowling. But then myself and one of the other teachers from one of the other schools were like, why would we bring three schools that are in the Bronx down to Manhattan? Let's do something local in the Bronx. And so we tried to keep our work, even the celebrations, to the borough where we're all coming from. I think the next couple of slides have just some photos of our kids working together, just to give you a visual. This is at St. Ignatius in Hunts Point, and they wear uniforms. So you can see all the kids sort of up near the basketball hoop. This is after a game of basketball had broken out out there, but all the kids in uniform are from St. Ignatius, and then our kids are the ones not in uniform, in the jeans and leggings in the front. This slide is a photo from PS 279. Every year on the Tuesday night before Thanksgiving, they open up their school to like a joint potluck Thanksgiving Day, what they call a soup kitchen, really. About a third of the population at PS 279 at any given time is living in a shelter, the students. And again, this is a K-8 school in a very different neighborhood in the Bronx, but they open up their doors to all of their families, but also to local, firefighters and policemen and shelters nearby. And our kids on student council, who you'll see there, are serving alongside some of their students. We attend every year, and we help serve alongside the kids from the student council at PS 279. Again, I think this was at their Thanksgiving Day soup kitchen. We went to not New York Knicks, but the Westchester Knicks game together one year, which was a lot of fun. So this is all three schools there. This was at the Bumper Cars Arcade one time. We had hosted a carnival here at our campus, and this was the mini golf that we had set up for kids. And let's see if there's any more photos on here. All right, so here we go. I hope that gives you a sense of the kind of fun that we've had together over the years. So common challenges, and I think that any of you who work in schools can relate that probably the biggest challenge is always scheduling and finding the time. I think with 3 different schools and 3 different calendars, 3 different vacation schedules, 3 different testing calendars, it's hard. Our students are super committed to after school activities and sports. They've got, all sorts, kids, as you know, lead very, very busy lives, busier than a lot of adults that I know, at least. And so I think finding the common time to meet is certainly a challenge. And so some years we have to be okay with the fact that the meetings aren't going to happen as often as we would like. I think, we try our best to plan early. So we have been emailing, since September, knowing that it takes a little while for the student councils to come together. Our elections, I think, were not until October, and then it takes a little while for them to get off the ground and running. So we have a couple emails back and forth amongst the adults at the 3 schools trying to find a date this month to get together for the first time. But just to realize, that this does, you got to be flexible, and you also have to try to work around each other's calendars. So, public school vacation is at a different time than private school, so they're off in February, we're off in March, they're off again in April. So we try to find, if you plan it enough in advance, the common times that we can all get together. And again, not be too disappointed if one of those dates falls through. I think in terms of logistics, we rotate where these meetings are taking place. So we host here at Riverdale. We've gone to St. Ignatius for meetings, and we've also been to 279. So I think it's important to note that not one school is always the one that hosts. I think the rotation is really actually quite important. And the celebration that we've done has usually been somewhere neutral. So in the beginning, as I said, it was St. Ignatius coming to us for this Valentine's Day dinner. And that just felt a little bit, I don't know, it felt funny that we were, the ones always hosting. And so, we leave it up to the kids to decide. And of course, they want to do fun things like bowling and bumper cars, which means that it's in a neutral location. So not just one school is always hosting. And I think the rotation of those meetings is important as well, because each school feels a sense of pride when they host, and they give the other student councils a tour of their school. And, it's kind of fun to show off your school, and it's fun for our students and their students to visit different schools that are totally unlike their own. We are on a huge campus, for example, whereas PS 279 and Ignatius are all, located in one building. But it is fun to visit other schools to see sort of how they, how they run things. So for example, when we visited St. Ignatius, which is the parochial school in Hunts Point, they have two different staircases. It's a very vertical school, and they have two different staircases. On the left is for boys only, and on the right is for girls only. And when our students were visiting, and it was a big deal that because it was after school, it was a co-ed group. All three schools are co-ed, but that for Ignatius to be touring us around, and for our kids, both boys and girls, to all be in the boys' stairwell and then all be in the girls' stairwell, it was like they were like, "This is crazy. We never have girls in the boys' stairwell. I can't believe," And then our kids were like, "What do you mean you can only have boys in the stairwell?" So it prompted a really interesting discussion. So location, I would say, matters to rotate the meetings amongst the three schools. And then transportation, I think, is challenging. And depending where you are in the world, it can be easier, it can be more difficult. Buses, at least for us, are very expensive. So every time we do take one of these trips, a round trip school bus ride to get 20 or 25 kids there and back costs, I can't remember, somewhere between $400 and $450 or something like that. So, thinking about, and I wish that that public transportation in the Bronx was better. I wish we could get on the subway with the kids or walk, if it was in Manhattan and they were, 10 blocks away. I wish that was the case. And it's not. And so I think that can become a challenge as well. Some of the successes that we've had, though, and why I feel, and again, it's not always perfect, but I feel like the adults at least are in regular communication with each other. So I think that helps a lot. And I think that the adults at principals, and my head, a middle school who's very involved, are in regular communication with each other via email. And over the years, the adult leadership at all three schools has remained the same, and that has led to this continuity. And I think a lot of times when principals leave, and that can create, so then somebody new comes in and you don't know them, and that relationship can fall apart. I think we've been pretty lucky because all three heads have been at each of their schools a long time and are very invested in this relationship and in continuing it. So I think that has helped a lot. I think a common desire amongst all three schools to continue this collaboration, it might have been one of those things that happened one year and then that's it, and then it's like, okay, good, we're done. That was great, but I think that this common desire amongst all three to continue it, and not only continue doing, the same thing every year, but to build off of it and continue adding, new insight and building even deeper relationships, I think has been key. And then the last point is that, it's not always perfect, and realizing that that's okay. Some years, I think one of the years we may never have made it to St. Ignatius. We tried, or they never made it to us. I think their van broke down. There was a snowstorm one day, our meeting that had gotten canceled already got canceled again. And, realizing that, with three schools and three schedules, it's hard, it's difficult, and it's okay if, your plans, don't go through, and, but just to know that, that you all have a similar goal, which is to stay connected and to continue building these relationships and keep these students connecting with each other year after year. On the right of the slide is just one of the brainstorms I kept after one of the joint brainstorming sessions that students at all three student councils had done together to think about how they wanted to celebrate their year together. So everything from a movie night to bingo, a pool party, I'm not sure what pool we would be having a pool party at, playing Manhunt, doing a talent show, etc. And it's always fun to see them come together to brainstorm, how they want to celebrate. And I think that is all. I hope that my timing is okay. I think, Blake, you had said about 20 minutes or so. Let me see. Yeah, I think that's it. So happy to answer any questions that you have, or if you have similar structures at your school. I'd love to learn what you are all doing and what you've found challenging and how you've approached those challenges, and then where your success stories lie. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll open it up to questions, and nothing is off limits, so ask away.
I'd like to hear more about your regular communication. What does that look like? How did that work?
Sure. So the three, for example, I think yesterday we were emailing back and forth. The three principals are always, sort of copied on those emails, or already or always included. And then there's usually somebody like in my role at all three schools. So as director of service learning, I work closely with our student council to come up with, our student council does a myriad of things, as I'm sure that yours at your schools do as well. But one of the things that they like to focus on is service. And so I just helped them to coordinate their middle school dance-a-thon, for example. Each of the kids had to raise a certain amount of money to dance for a certain amount of time. And then the student council researches and decides which organizations the money that was collected via the whole middle school is going to go to. So the person that's in my role at PS 279 is the woman who helps run their student council. And then similarly at St. Ignatius, there is a woman who is in a similar role, who I think works both with student council and after school programming. And so, I think that we're just in touch, usually mostly via email, though we do text sometimes too, because we've become friends and we've become friendly over the years. But I think that keeping everyone in the loop at all three schools, checking in about, okay, what are the upcoming dates that work for you? For example, our student council meets on Fridays over lunch. And so when we host, if the two schools are able to come to a Friday lunch meeting, then we try to make that happen on our end. But I know St. Ignatius, their student council meets on Tuesdays after school. And so we try to be respectful of the fact that, that's when their student council meets. So when we go to St. Ignatius, it tends to be for the Tuesdays after school, as long as we can get our students back in time for our late 6 p.m. buses. But usually at their meetings, we'll have sort of like a pizza social type of thing and a meeting, and then we'll head back to our campus. But I think having, people designate, in those roles at each of the three schools has certainly helped, and copying and keeping in the loop the administration, the principals has helped as well.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Let's see, budget.
Do any of you have similar partnerships with other schools that you that are structured differently? I'd love to hear. It doesn't have to be student councils, but do you have schools that you've partnered with, or that you currently partner with, that where you have a different structure set up?
We have a similar structure set up at our school, which we've had the partnership for about 4 years. And we are actually running into a roadblock this year. The person who has previously been in charge, I think her role has changed a bit. So we are running into some issues with communication and, a common time to meet and all that sort of stuff. So we sort of were wondering, you sort of hit on those, on those things that make the partnership a success. And all three of those things, I think, are where we're failing. It's just that communication piece.
Right.
I think the part with having an invested interest in keeping the partnership alive is where we're struggling. there's the desire on their part, but not a follow through. So the and the words aren't meeting up. And as Kendall said, and it's not any fault to them. I think simply their faculty is overloaded and doesn't have the time or resources to really truly partner. That's where we're running into problems.
Right. No, I hear you. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I think, communication is key. I mean, nothing would happen without, pretty regular and constant communication on all of our behalfs, right? Like, it can't be one-sided and then you just sitting there waiting for an email response. I would say, like, similar to how we really honed in on our student councils, if there's something where you can find commonalities between your school and theirs, or maybe it's an event that happens anyway, so for example, at PS 279, that the Tuesday evening before Thanksgiving every year is something that they host regardless of whether we're there or not. So that was something that they invited us to several years ago, and we have gone, made it a commitment to go every year and bring our student council, some of them and some of their families actually as volunteers. But if you can link into something that they're already doing or that you're already doing and invite them along, or ask if you can join them, I think that's a good place to start, because you can jump in and sort of help, and it wouldn't be extra work for them or for yourself.
Do you have a meeting with them at all when you join them for that event? Because I'm wondering, we have events, of course, that we could invite them to, but I just worry that they would come and then leave without any type of
right
meeting of the minds.
We don't have a meeting. And it was really just organized, sort of over email. And we put the call out to our student council. We met, with our student council and said, here's an opportunity. We can take, the first 15 to sign up, or whatever it might be, whatever the maximum number was. And then we had some of their parents who wanted to join as well. And so, we have a pretty willing and enthusiastic population of students who like to volunteer. And so we always have to be like, okay, well, it's first come, first serve. And so then we get the kids who sign up right away. And, and then we try to make sure that everyone gets to volunteer at different points throughout the year. But for that one, for example, it was the first few who signed up. And we told them, some of them had already been to PS 279 for a joint student council meeting. So they were familiar with the school. Some had not been yet. And so they were wanting to go. But I don't think a joint meeting is necessarily required before an event like that, as long as, making sure that at the event itself, that both of the students from both schools are working together. I think, and that's what I love about that event, is that we're working alongside their volunteers in serving, serving dinner. And then, hopefully you hope that, relationships are formed. I think, kids exchanged, I don't know, Snapchats or whatever they do, whatever kids do at that event. And then they stay in touch that way. And, and so that way at the next joint meeting, they see each other and they remember each other, and, further deepen those relationships.
Rachel, I have a question, and it goes along with the other comments. Do you have explicit outcomes that you and the other two schools wish to achieve with your students? And that sort of piggybacks to my suggestion of, when you're struggling with a relationship or a partnership, trying to, and I know right now for you all it's communication, right? So it's hard to say, go have a meeting, because you're having a hard time, communicating with them at all, but trying to have a conversation saying, like, these are the sorts of outcomes we'd like to have for our students, and what outcomes would you like for your students in this partnership? And they don't have to be the same outcomes, right? They can be different, but to be able to say then 6 months down the line, when something shifts, say like, oh, remember when we said these were our outcomes, and I don't think we're really meeting these, so maybe we shift something this way, or we focus a little bit more on X, Y, or Z. So anyway, my question is, do you all have explicit or articulated outcomes? And if so, how are you tracking them?
That's a great question. I don't think we necessarily have explicit outcomes, though. Before the meetings, the adults that are sort of on these emails, we will share, here's our rough agenda for the upcoming joint meeting. you know, and again, if it's the beginning of the year, it's really like a name game, an icebreaker, a team building activity. You know, so for example, we'll do something where we had, you know, a list of, you know, I think the game was something called like high five a neighbor or high five someone in the room. And then you list a whole bunch of stuff. So if you have a brother, if you like ice cream, if you play basketball, if you like to dance, you know, things like that. And so, and, you know, we say, try to find someone who you don't know. So you know, the kids are all going around high-fiving each other over things over commonalities, right? So I think, you know, if I were to articulate the
Right.
you know, the goal there would be just to, you know, to break the ice, to get to know each other, and also to find commonalities, you know, amongst the kids from different schools, so that they, you know, develop that level of comfort and, you know, and find things that they share in common with other kids their age, who they don't know yet. And so I think, you know, sharing the agendas ahead of time is helpful. We also let the student leader, so we have a madam president this year, which is awesome. So she will, and her and the vice president will lead part of the meeting. So we let the students who are in 8th grade at all 3 schools be involved in that agenda planning, and we leave some of that up to them. And so, so they, you know, I think kids know best what kids like to do, or, you know, they get it, they know they have a sense of what would be fun better than we do as the adults. And so I think that's an important piece of it too, is developing leadership amongst the 3 schools, and having them be part of that planning. You know, so I would say each joint meeting has sort of a goal or, you know, context that we want to, you know, sort of strive to, you know, to hit. But I'm not sure if we have like an overarching goal, like you said, or, you know, that we aim to reach overall, though I think, you know, I think each school could probably articulate it, but it's not anything, I mean, I don't think anyone has it written down anywhere, though it's probably a good idea to do that.
Well, I'm just asking, I think it's probably pretty clear that you know what you're trying to achieve. I'm just always wondering if it's written down, because if suppose you go to a different school next year and somebody comes in and takes your role,
right?
How do you make sure that this relationship is an institutionally based relationship? And so sometimes, though, it seems redundant, because of course we know what the goal, like, I mean, it's so clear what your goals are for your program, right? Your goals are to break down the barriers amongst these kids in these 3 schools. Mm-hmm. But the person who's coming in next year might see student council and see leadership and think that there's a whole different set of goals that you're trying to achieve. So always trying to help the sustainability of these programs.
Right. And I think that would only aid in helping with, you know, things like continuity. You're right, if somebody does leave, if one of the principals, you know, there it tends to be pretty high turnover in schools, and I think that should one of the principals or somebody in my role at the schools leave, I think, you know, yes, there's like an email train, but I think that I think, you know, it certainly can't hurt to have it, you know, sort of explicitly written down somewhere. Yeah.
How do you handle money? How do you handle budgeting and among your partners? And
yeah, it's a great question. So I think partially that's one of the reasons why we try to rotate the hostings of the meetings. So I think that each school has a chance to host. So that number one, it doesn't feel like, you know, one school's always hosting or one school's better than the other 2, you know, things like that.
right.
And so I think that helps. I will say that there was an issue with busing. I think PS 279 in years past, I think legally, because they're a public school and because the busing, there was some issue with the busing. They weren't allowed to hire and pay for a bus during school hours. They could only come to us after school. And our meetings are like at noon on Friday or something like that. And so we ended up paying for their busing to get here and back a couple of times, because legally they weren't allowed to do that. So, you know, they were appreciative of it, and we were appreciative that they were able to come. And we were happy to pay, you know, under our budget. just so that the meeting could take place. But is that ideal for Riverdale to be paying for the buses for $279? Not really. Does it set up sort of like an uncomfortable, awkward interaction? Absolutely. But we kind of looked at the bigger picture, which was, well, this meeting won't be able to happen unless we get the buses to get them here and get them back safely. So I think
Right.
I think we were thinking, okay, well, what's the goal here, right? I mean, we want the meeting to take place. We want these kids to get together, and if that's what it's got to be.
Yeah.
And then
How do you get your budget on your school? I mean, is there like a healthy budget for community outreach, community service, or is that something you fiddle with every year to try and figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, I think every year, I have a budget within our Department of Service Learning, and then the Middle School Student Council has its own budget.
Okay.
And so between the two, we're able to, to sort of make ends meet.
Sure.
So that's been great. And then the other thing I was going to say at the end of the year, the celebration, what we try to do is have, again, in the past, we were the ones hosting, and it felt funny. Like the first 2 years or 3 years, we were hosting this like end of the year celebration because we have this big, beautiful campus. We have these big, amazing fields and gyms and basketball courts and tennis courts. And we've hosted this big carnival. And this was like, the idea, it came from the student councils together that they wanted to put this carnival together. And it was like color wars, and all the kids were split up, all three schools, like team orange, team purple, team blue, and it was a lot of fun, and it was great. And thankfully the weather, held out, the 2 years we did it, but, it felt weird to me, to be honest. Like, it was uncomfortable to be the school who always hosted just because we had the space and we had the resources. And, and that's why we made that change. And it was a conscious decision to move it to a neutral location in the Bronx.
Yeah.
It didn't feel right to be the ones hosting all the time. And
I agree. There's so many messages that could have been sent without your intending them to be sent.
Absolutely. And again, like, we're happy to host, but it set up a dynamic that I was not comfortable with. And so therefore we looked into the neutral spaces. And then on top of that, so I think 1 year we took them to the movies, 1 year it was bowling. We asked that each student contribute, I can't remember how much, maybe $5 or $10, and each student from every school. So, in order to participate in this fun day off campus, bowling or whatever it might be, and everyone there was some student package where like every, student got to bowl 2 games and got 1 slice of pizza and 1 Coke or something like that. And so we were able to kind of come together, and that way it was sort of fair across the board. And it wasn't like we were paying for the other 2 schools to participate.
Right.
That's not a very weird dynamic.
That's not the dream.
Right.
No.
You're right. So we try to be, sensitive to that and aware of that. But again, with the busing example or the hosting the first couple of times, I think you do what you can to make it as equitable and as, as possible. But sometimes, we paid for the buses for $279 or what have you. And, I'm okay with that as long as, the program continues, because the alternative was the kids weren't going to get to meet. So,
No, that makes sense. Totally.
I'm realizing, and Rachel asked me this yesterday, we haven't introduced ourselves, and so this isn't helping in the network building component of it. So Laura, will you introduce yourself really quickly so that everybody can know where everyone is coming from?
Yeah, so my name's Laura Cole, and I'm in Dallas, Texas at Good Shepherd Episcopal School, and my title is Director of Collaborations and Partnerships. Next year we will have a Director of Community Service, or whatever the term will be. But before this, I was the Maker Ed design thinking teacher, and so I got really interested in partnering kids from different schools to solve problems together using the design process and making things together. And so I eventually realized what I was doing. I was like, oh, this is social impact. This is community service. I love it. So I want to do more of this. So that's us. Oh, pre-K through 8, by the way.
And just a shout out to the schools in Dallas who they had a huge tornado not too long ago. What is it? In 3 weeks?
Yeah. 10
and
tornadoes came through our city.
And as a result, many schools were devastated. You know, like 8 or 10 elementary schools completely out of commission. One independent school.
4 in our area. Yeah, 4 in our little neighborhood.
And as a result of years of collaboration amongst the independent schools, the public schools, and a nonprofit in the area called United to Learn, it has been amazing to watch the impact of public-private partnership to help a community in need. I'm just watching it from here through Instagram and talking to Laura at Hockaday.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's not why you're planning these partnerships at all, but the foundation of those trust-based relationships are so important. So I just wanted to say that about Dallas because it's been remarkable to watch. And a little tidbit is that NNSP, the idea for NNSP came out of Dallas and New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, because Dallas independent schools adopted so many families from New Orleans during Katrina that one of the head of schools from New Orleans was thinking, like, if the independent schools can open up their worlds for other independent schools, why can't all schools open up their worlds for each other? So natural disaster is a impetus for change.
We had experience with that in particular, and we had what would have been the first day of school for students, even first grade students, at our school, and they were from New Orleans, but here they are, and they're refugees, and they're going to their first day of school at a campus that's not theirs, and it was really a beautiful thing. It was not a terrible thing. It was such a beautiful thing the way it unfolded. So we were all better for it.
Yep. So that's why we don't want natural disasters to happen, but we're inadvertently laying the foundation to help one another.
Well, we had something in common to work on, right? So that's what it was, right? Yeah.
Okay, ladies, you want to introduce yourselves?
Yes. Hi, I'm Kendall Hunter, and this is Kate Brown.
Kate Brown.
We are from St. Paul's School for Girls in Baltimore. I'm the middle school dean of students.
And I teach middle school English, and we are co-leading our student government this year, who has in the past had the partnership with Baltimore Leadership School for Young Women. This year it's taken sort of a different form in that we are having my elective, a community service elective, partnering with the school.
Yeah.
Yes, so what's that?
I said shout out for Baltimore, that's where I'm from.
Oh, hi.
I mean, I live in DC, but I am born and bred Baltimore girl.
Oh, awesome.
So anyway, thank you for being here. Dave, you're here.
I'm here.
Okay, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm just down the road from Riverdale. I'm at Horace Mann.
Oh.
And I have a program called Grab the Torch, which is here at Manhattan College in Horace Mann, and also at the University of Denver. And we moved to the Bronx to be very specific this year, and we launched our All Bronx initiative on last Tuesday night with Richard Blanco. Mm-hmm. So we had a large community event, and we're looking more towards the high schools in the Bronx. So we're working with the Bronx Department of Ed out of Ruben Diaz's office, and the New York State Catholic schools. And so it's pretty exciting. We've been working with Horace Mann for 4 years, or actually 5 years now, and have had great success, and head of school who's a pretty innovative guy, wanted to do this new community outreach, and so we're doing it together. And in the spring, we're doing a all Bronx initiative. Richard Blanco's coming back. So we're going to have a big event in Van Cortlandt Park. And we're going to put a call to action out for every public charter and independent school in the Bronx to write poetry. And we'll have a big contest, and we'll select some winners, and they'll be part of Richard's program in the spring. So
Cool.
that's what I'm doing.
Thanks for being here. Are there more questions for Rachel?
I have a question for Rachel. Rachel, are you getting any help out of the Department of Ed and the New York State Catholic School Association?
We are not to my knowledge. But I'm glad that you brought that up, because I will certainly ask our two partner schools. And as you were talking, I know I wasn't able to go to the event last week, but I know that several Riverdale people were there and spoke very highly of it. And as you're talking about, this initiative in the spring about bringing together public, private, and charter schools around poetry, I wonder if that might become possibly a focus for our student councils this year. And maybe we can attend, that project in the spring. So we should connect. I know we're already on email together, but we should connect, outside of this to talk more, because that might be a nice way to focus our student council, the 3 schools this year.
No, I think it'll be great. It'll be, my philosophy is the more the merrier. And, the theme of this outreach in the spring is the art of conversation and introduction. So it's our goal to bring more kids from the Bronx, neighborhood by neighborhood together, which is, there are many, as you probably know, Rachel, there's a gazillion silos here.
I know.
And there's very few open fields. And so we're hoping to to kind of comfortably break down some silos. And there's a nice piece on BronxNet about the event. So you can take a peek at that.
Okay.
And they're coming back on Friday to do another piece on us. So I think there'll be some great community outreach that I'm absolutely delighted to help with, with you.
Great. Thank you. No, I definitely look forward to following up. I think the work that you're doing is, bringing Bronx, students from across the borough together, I think is a really great thing. Is it mostly high school age or middle school as well?
Well, it's both, but my sweet spot is high school, just because of the Grab the Torches program. But we're dealing with Bronx Science and Riverdale Kingsbridge, and and as you probably know, the CCVA program here at Horace Mann is now in its 16th year, and I think it's one of the only programs in the country that's fully endowed, which is pretty amazing. It's the only endowed program on campus. And, they've been working with Kingsbridge and Montefiore since the beginning. And they have a very robust weekly program, and they bus the kids here on Thursdays. And the art shows are amazing. And I think the nicest part about it is as you indicated, there are 2 good things: is the food. You provide the food and everybody's happy. But I have to say that when I sit back and watch them come in on Thursdays, these kids are completely and totally comfortable. They don't feel like they're on this, grand campus, and they're not welcomed, and they're not part of the dynamic, and they are, which it's incredible what they've achieved. So lots of good things are happening, and we're just delighted to be here and right around the corner from both of the schools,
Yeah, that's great. No, I know Horace Mann work with Dr. Jeremy Leeds over at Horace Mann, and he heads up the CCVA, and they have a whole wing devoted to this, and so it's pretty inspiring. We don't have quite as many people on our team, though we do a lot. We work with a lot of similar, not similar, but even the same organizations as Horace Mann and Fieldston. So I think every week On Mondays, we visit Riverdale Neighborhood House, and I think on Tuesdays, Horace Mann goes, and Wednesday, Fieldston goes. And similar with Kingsbridge Heights Community Center. We're there Wednesdays. I think Horace Mann is there Tuesdays. So it's funny. We have a lot of partners in common, and we should definitely talk more. So thank you for being on the call.
Sure. And by the way, I would be remiss in not sending Luana's big wishes to you. And she thinks you're about the best thing since anything. So
thank you.
Always good. Always good.
Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry, I was muted and I was talking. In an interest of time, I know you all have real school. It's almost 1 my time. And so at last chance for questions, I will say what I always say is that please reach out to me. Should you have any questions or want to make any connections with other schools, or want to talk about how to overcome some challenges that you're having in existing partnerships, that is pretty much my favorite thing to do on a daily basis, is to connect with people across the country who are doing this work. I would be remiss if I didn't say that I would love to see all of you in January. We have our national conference, the 26th and 27th in Philadelphia. And we are hosting in Baltimore one of our 2-day symposiums called Degrees of Impact. It's what we hosted at Hockaday School in Dallas in the summer when there was another natural disaster and there was no power and all the streets were closed. But it'll be in Baltimore at the beginning of March, and we just firmed up those days. It'll be at Bryn Mawr School. So that's open for everyone. This is not one of these regional meetings. It's open for everybody. It's a little bit more of a design thinking process of how to repurpose and structure some of the programs that already exist in your school. Anyway, that is what we have going on. You can see it all on our website. Rachel, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Rachel will also be at our conference.
I will be.
In January. If you'd like to have her in real life. I'm sure she has a young one at home, so she'll be happy to have a drink at the bar with you at the end of the day for some more conversation. But anyway, thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
I don't know what the date of the next one is. It's somewhere in December, but I'll send out a reminder. But anyway, thank you for being here. I love these.
Thank you.
Rachel, thank you again for sharing all your work.
Of course, anytime.
Bye.
Hey,
Bye-bye.
bye everybody.
Bye-bye.
Oh gosh.